here in America, we are getting into the end of the school year. People are getting to the end of their junior year or their sophomore year, and maybe even graduating from high school. Like my son is graduating from high school in about a month. And so I had this conversation with my friend Tez Brooks. He's a missionary and an author, and he has written a book called Adultonomics, where he really feels a need to mentor a little bit, give some guidance to young people as they are stepping out into the world. And so here we are, about to do that and have that great conversation. So check that out. And first, go into the description and click on the link for a free ebook. It'll download right to you about being set free and living free in Christ and what that means. And there are lots of different articles going over those topics. There's also a link in there for Tez and his website. And there's a link in there for my most recent book, We Were Reborn for This. And I think it's still 99 cents. So check all that out, and let's get to the conversation. Well, welcome back to Kingdom Over Coffee. I have a return guest for everybody. I think this is your third time. It's at least your second. I think it's probably your third, right?
It could be, yeah.
Yeah. We talk all the time at conferences and other things, so I think it's at least your third time. But this is Tez Brooks. How you doing today, Tez?
I'm doing lovely. How about you?
I'm doing well, and Tez is out there in Colorado. I'm here in Atlanta, and so he is out there in Colorado. And with the wonders of technology, we are having a conversation today. Is it cold out there in Colorado? There's like a blizzard or some coldness going on up there.
It's cold. It's beautiful, sunny today, but it is like 30 degrees. So I'm looking right now at Pikes Peak out my window of my writing studio, and
Suffering
it's covered
for Jesus.
with snow. But yeah, I don't usually start hiking till spring because it's a little too cold for me.
Yeah.
You know, I spent 35 years or more than 35 in Orlando area. So
oh, right. That's right.
Moving out here 6 years ago was a big change and adjustment for us, but we're trying.
Well, my sister and my brother-in-law live out there, not in Colorado Springs, but they live out more towards Breckenridge and a lot of the skiing areas, and they love it. And I've been out there, and it is so beautiful. And
it is.
And the culture, I don't know about where you are, but the culture was always like, get out, go do something. Why are we staying inside? I don't know if that's true there in Colorado Springs, but
it is. Yeah. It's an outdoor culture. And so all your activities are, outdoors. And, it was not that way in Orlando. It's hot and muggy and everything's indoors with the air conditioning. And so when I moved here and started hiking, I lost like 35 pounds in the first year. I just don't hike in Florida. It's miserable. So yeah, it's an outdoor culture for sure here.
Yeah. So Tez, why don't you introduce yourself a little bit to people if this is their first time hearing about you? Who are you? What do you do? All that.
Oh, who am I? Gosh.
There you go.
Well, I'll start with my day job because that's what Americans want to know. What do you do? So my wife and I are full-time missionaries. We've been missionaries for decades, and we worked with the Jesus Film Project for years. We still do a little bit. We're more independent missionaries now, but on the side, and this is how you and I met, my side gig is writing and authoring books and teaching at writers' conferences. I just love pouring into other writers and helping them with their learning curve, especially if they're new and aspiring writers. But I love working with writers who are more established too, like you. It's just fun. They're my people, Christian writers. And so when I get tired and weary of doing ministry, which even Jesus did that and got away for a while, my go-to place to refresh is to be with my writer friends or to write something. And so, yeah, it's a very much, those are the two biggest parts of my life. I've got 4 kids, just one left at home now. And so we're about to be empty nesters, and that'll be a new season for us. But we are kind of best friends, Christine and I, my wife. And so we're already seeing that it's not going to be a huge adjustment. It's actually going to be fun because when we got married, we were only alone, the two of us, for about maybe 6 months because I had an older daughter that moved in with us. And then after she left, we got pregnant with our own children. And so we've never really been alone very long. So we're really looking forward to that.
Yeah. Yeah. My wife and I talk about it too. I'm getting to that age where I'm like, hey man, this has been fun. These kids are awesome, but how do we get them all out of the house? How does that happen? But
how do you do it successfully?
And
right?
how do you do it successfully?
So many kids boomerang back home because we haven't prepared them properly, or we think we have. And so that's I have a passion for helping parents that I see are a little bit more helicopter parents, which isn't really a good thing. There's a good balance between being a free range parent and a helicopter parent. And I hope that I ended up being in the middle somewhere like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think with this past generation, and I'm dealing with this right now with my son. So my oldest is, we are ushering him out the door. We are, holding his hand and being like, it's okay. So here's what you're going to need.
Right.
Because he has all these ideas about he's going to get a job and he's going to be prepared, man. I mean, it's not just that he's graduating from high school. He's in a great tech program at the high school level that is preparing him with certifications in cybersecurity. So he's going to be ready for a job when he graduates. He's going to be ready to make decent money, actually. So, but I had to help him get a bank account, and he still doesn't have a driver's license, and he's got his learner's permit. And so there's all these sort of things that when I talk with him, I'm like, dude, you don't want to do this all at once.
Right.
You don't want to do this all in a couple of weeks. Let's try to build some of these and, trying to give him not incentives, but helping him to understand that we can help him get some of these things now. And
he's going to be launched more confidently because he's spent time. Okay, I don't have to open a bank account and get this and this and this and everything. If it all comes at once because we've protected them so long, and then okay, fly away. Good luck with life. I think you're really wise in saying, let's do this right now, and then in a few months we'll do this, and just kind of break him in slowly. So that he's not totally caught off guard. Like, what? What are bills? I have to pay bills?
Oh, I know.
Car insurance. What is that?
Right. And all that stuff, because as a young man, he wants to be independent, and he declares how much he wants to do his own thing. And we just keep coming back to the same point. Well, you're not doing the things to help you be independent. You're not. This is what I'm trying to do. And every kid is different, because my next youngest, my daughter, Elisha, she's ready to move out tomorrow. Not because she doesn't like us, but because she's just that sort of independent minded. I want to do it myself. And she wanted to get her learners on her 15th birthday, and her, I mean, she's ready. I mean, she's going to Germany on her own this summer. She applied and won a scholarship to go to Germany.
Wow.
For 2 or 3 weeks. World. Right. It's going to open her world. And she loves those sort of experiences where she gets to discover things and learn things and get out on her own. So every kid's a little different. And so it's some of what we're talking about. Is that what kind of led you? Is that sort of behind the writing of this book? That you got coming up?
Absolutely. Yeah. Adultonomics, how to nail it on your own. I just saw, my own experience growing up. My mom died when I was 18. And so And all my brothers were often married by then. I was born much later and younger. So I had older parents. My mom died when I was 18, and so it's just me and my dad. And shortly after that, I moved off like 1,000 miles away to go to college. So I grew up in the Detroit area, moved down to Florida to go to college, to Bible college, and I realized, wow, mom was doing everything for me. I look back now and I'm like, that was probably God's blessings because I was a bit of a mama's boy. She did everything. My dad was really good about when I was like 16, me and all my three older brothers. I didn't have any sisters, but um, the minute we turned 16, he said, you need to get a job and you're going to pay your mom minimal room and board. Not that we need your money or that we're trying to take money from you. We want you to learn the responsibility of what a bill is.
Mm-hmm.
And so I paid my mom, a little bit out of my paycheck, like maybe 30, 40 bucks. She'd turn around and spend it on me, buying me new clothes or whatever. So but it taught me, if I didn't pay that, my dad would say, look, you got 3 days or you're going to pay some interest. We got to treat this like you're really a boarder, and that we're a landlord. And so I'm grateful for that. But there were still a lot of other things that I wasn't prepared for. When you pull your laundry out of the washing machine and everything's pink. I'm like, what? How did this happen? Somebody
Yeah.
sabotaged my. And no, you were an idiot and you washed it with your brand new red T-shirt. I'm like, oh, so I had to wear pink underwear for a few days, and learn how to change a tire on my car on the freeway because I failed to show any interest when my dad tried to teach me. I'm like, nah, I don't need to learn that. Well, guess what? Here I am now on the freeway trying to change a car, or change a tire. There's just a lot that I had to learn. But I quickly found out, if I watched other people, like my older brothers, and started asking questions. Back then, mentors weren't in vogue. Accountability wasn't in vogue. You just kind of lived your life on your own. It was the 80s and it was crazy. And yeah, so my own experience combined with watching other people as a youth pastor, I became a youth pastor later, and watching some of the young people. I recently read that over 50% of young adults boomerang back home within the first few years. And a lot of that, I mean, it's good. I think there should be a safe place you can come back to with boundaries and maybe even a written contract with your parents, with an end date. Like, I'm going to come back here to get my feet back on the ground. Thank you for helping me. But, a lot of parents don't want to do that, to write up an agreement of like, okay, now you're an adult. These are the rules of our household. And these are the rules we're going to toss out because it was only because you were a minor. Now you're an adult, so we don't need to know every time you're coming and going, but we do need to know this and this and this. And so I think agreements are good. I'm not saying it's bad to come back home, but to boomerang home, which means no definite end time. You're coming back to just be lazy because you don't want to pay your bills or you've mismanaged your money. And parents have a big heart. They love their kids and they just want you to get a leg up in this world. And so that often becomes the go-to place of, but to just move back in with your parents without any agreement or discussion about what's going to happen. And so I saw this happen and that happen. I saw a lot of helicopter parents, friends of ours that, man, we had one parent that we knew who bought a laptop for their daughter when she moved away to college, just so that she would keep the lid open and they could watch her on the camera while she slept.
Huh?
I'm like, that's not only,
oh my goodness,
helicopter parenting is a little creepy.
That's
But
pretty creepy.
They didn't trust that, that she could take care of herself and that she was in a safe place. And, you're hundreds of miles away. What are you going to do if you're watching something on a camera, it's just overboard. So a lot of parents are going to their kids' professors and arguing about the grades. And I'm like, look, when I was on my own. If I wanted to discuss a grade, I did not call up my parents and say, come tell this professor, what to do. Same with bosses. They're showing up to fill out an application with their kid for a
Mm-hmm.
job. And I'm like, if I'm a boss and I see the parent walk in, I am not going to hire you because you can't even get away from your parent and they're accompanying you to a job interview. But a lot of this is our fault as parents. We think we're helping when we're really not. We're teaching them to be dependent on us instead of being totally dependent on Christ. And so that's where this book came from. It's just know-how and wisdom from other kids who have gone through this before and said, "Boy, I wish I knew this or that." So some of this advice, it's not all mine. It's other empty nesters, parents, it's professors, it's college kids that are like 25, 26 years old saying, uh, you should give them this tip if they're a high schooler, leaving home for the first time or graduate. So yeah, and a lot of it is scripture from Proverbs and other parts of the Bible. Some famous quotes from famous people. So I'm excited because I've got some good feedback from teenagers, but yeah, and it's just all kinds of stuff. It's every topic from how to treat your boyfriend or girlfriend to how to be a good employee, how to change the oil in your car, and they're just one-liners. There's 500 tips, and they're not more than maybe 10 words each. There's like 3 or 4 on each page, so they can just slowly go through it, and it's all mixed up. They're not in groups of like, oh, this is how to run a household, or this is how to this is about hygiene or whatever. It's just stuff that parents, I mean, I didn't remember to tell you don't remember to tell your kid every little thing. It's whatever comes up in conversation. How are you going to remember to tell your kid, memorize your social security number because you're going to be asked for that a lot. I'm like, oh, that's a great idea. These are conversations you just don't have naturally that people that I've interviewed have said, you know what, you should put this tip in the book. And so here's one: respect your landlord's property. He doesn't love you like your parents do. Anything damaged may swallow your security deposit. There's stuff in here about romance, how to be a good coworker, how to trust God more. I think what I want them to walk away with when they're done with this book is to be totally dependent on Christ and not so dependent on your parents. That would be a win, I think.
Yeah, right. So where did the title come from? And I like the title a lot. Adultonomics. Yeah. Like, where did that come from?
I just thought about, back when I was in high school, we used to have home economics. And usually it was for the girls, learn how to take care of a house, how to go shopping, how to cook, how to vacuum, just all kinds of stuff. Home ec. And I just thought, adulting is a hard thing. I mean, kids are filled with anxiety because they're not prepared to adult, and suddenly, So I just thought, what about adultonomics? That's kind of what this is about. It's know-how collected from others who've forged the path ahead of them, and so, I wanted to provide something that would help them handle setbacks with confidence, implement more effective life skills. And so, it comes out April 23rd, and we'll see what happens. I know a youth pastor had already said, I want a case that I'm going to give out to all of my young people that are graduating high school this year. But I learned a lot just by collecting some of the tips. Learned a lot. I'm like, wow, I didn't know that. And I'm a pretty old guy now. So, yeah.
So, you were talking before about 50%, boomerang back.
Yeah.
And is the other 50% just stay at home? So, my observations have been, and we talk very openly with our kids about our expectations and what's going to happen and the plan.
Yeah.
But and we're not against our kids staying in the house
Right.
necessarily, but I do think that there is this thing nowadays where it's hard to get kids to take up that responsibility. Do you think, like, what when you're talking with some of these kids and getting their advice, did you get any sort of sense why it's so hard for, because my son's not the only one who's 18 doesn't have his driver's license. Like, this is way more common than you might think, where they they just depend on, their parents to be the chauffeur, or they Uber. I mean, there are kids in my son's school, they just have an Uber account, and they just so there's all this difficulty that I see, for which was sort of assumed when I was growing up. Even, I didn't like it. I didn't want to have that responsibility either, but like that was the assumption. If you want money, you get a job. If you want freedom, you get a license. If you want these things, these are the pathway are these responsibilities. So did you get any sense of why it's so difficult now for some of these young people to sort of take up this mantle of adulthood?
Yeah, and I don't want to keep going back to blaming parents, because it's not always the parents' fault. But when you start asking questions, because even the parents are flabbergasted. They're like, I don't know why they're not interested in growing up. I think times are really different than when you and I were younger. We have more availability to help our kids that our parents didn't have for us. Let's take Uber, for example. You said that, Uber. So, I know of a young guy that doesn't feel a big need to get a car or a driver's license. And I thought, well, that's fine. There's lots of people like in New York City who don't own a car. It's just crazy to own one. But I said, so how are you affording an Uber to go to work every day? Like, he lives a half hour away from his job, so it's a half hour ride in an Uber there and back. And he has an Uber account, and he said, well, my parents pay for that. And I thought, okay, well, there's the problem right there. Because there's no incentive driving you to get your own car or your own license, because mom and dad are paying for it. So you'd be stupid to get a car and start paying the insurance and gasoline and upkeep and then go to driver's school and get a driver's license. That's a lot of trouble when that generation's already dealing with a lot of anxiety. But I wonder if that's also our fault, because we're protecting them too much, so that when adulting does appear, they're like, egads, what do I do with this? Mom and dad's always helped me. There was a college kid the other day that he eats at this fancy restaurant like 3 times a week, and he doesn't have a job. But his parents, they told me, well, he's embarrassed to go to McDonald's. He's in college. And I'm like, heck, I was lucky to go to McDonald's once a month. I loved it. And I hung out with all my friends at McDonald's when I was in college. It's like, but there's this higher standard also that some of these parents want these kids to start eating at better restaurants because it's embarrassing. You don't want your other students to think that's all you can afford is McDonald's. So here's a stipend every month for eating out at this fancy restaurant. And I just thought, oh my goodness, they don't want to live on campus anymore because that's embarrassing. For me, it was, I don't want to ride the school bus anymore because that's embarrassing. And so my dad said, well, then get a car and get a license if you want to be a big boy. And so, yeah, I think we just need to realize that we're causing a lot of the anxiety because we're protecting them, and we're making them maybe we're making them weak, this generation. They need a tougher skin. I don't know. I'm not saying that's the issue.
I definitely think that's part of it. Because we have, and part of it is parents, because there seems to be this idea and this concept in our culture that if our children fail, we have failed.
Yeah.
And that goes with parents and with the educational system. So, and I actually dealt with this So when, I don't want to get too political, but there was at one point a political thing of no child left behind.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I said, well, what if the kid deserves to be left behind?
Right.
And I know that sounds really mean to our culture today, but my point is, if you are the one that has to make sure they don't get left behind, then what have they actually learned? Right. Then we have this thing in our culture today with our kids where we don't want them to suffer the consequences of something. Like we take away, you can't give kids zeros if they don't, because that would hurt their grade too much. Or there's all these sort of, I'm just spitting these things out, but there is this idea. And so what we've done, this is my perspective, is our kids want the benefits of maturity without the responsibility of it. And I do too. Like, I totally get that. I would love to have the benefits of doing whatever the heck I wanted without having to be responsible for it and not suffering any consequences for it, and having somebody else pay for everything. Like that sounds amazing, but that isn't. But that isn't life, and that isn't that. And what we do, therefore, is I think what we're finding out is we don't like the kind of people we're producing. We realize that when they don't show up to work, and I hear this from employers, where it's like, I'd hire young people, but they won't show up, or they have all these demands that are completely unrealistic, and all because what we've taught our kids is like you're saying, is we've done all these things for them, but along the way, we haven't let them just suffer the consequences of not adulting. Say, if like I tell my son, if you want the freedom to go do something whenever you want, a step towards that is getting your driver's license. Now, you don't have a car, but you might be able to borrow one of ours if they are available. And that is and then if we are tired or we're busy doing something different, then you might have that option. All that to say is, like just let them suffer the consequences of what they do.
It's not that bad, because it doesn't kill you. Like you just realize, you know what? I don't have a car. No wonder I don't have friends. I don't hang out with anybody because I can't. Maybe if I stopped borrowing Dad's car, like I've got nowhere to go right now because Dad's got the car at work, and so I'm trapped in the house. But if I had my car, I'd have freedom. I could maybe get a job and have friends to hang out with after work. I wouldn't, it snowballs into suddenly I'm an adult, and it's not that hard. It really isn't. It's not, it wouldn't bring anxiety upon them if we would, it happens slowly. Just like with you or me, we didn't face adulting all at once.
No.
It happened slowly. It started at maybe 12 years old. We realized, if I don't do this, then this happens. And Mom's not going to save me from that. I just have to deal with that. How can I not deal with that again? I'll do something like this. It's just using logic to realize, you know what? But if you don't have to use logic and Mom and Dad are right there saying, hey, we'll take care of that for you. In fact, we can actually do it better than you can. That's the hard part as a parent for me, is watching them do it wrong or do it a difficult way when I just want to, it's like with your toddler and you're doing a puzzle with them. You want so bad to just say, stick that piece here. Can't you see it matches? And you just got to let them figure it out. And maybe they won't even figure it out that day. And it drives you crazy because you're like, let me just pour that glass of milk for you. I don't want to have to clean up the spilt milk because I'm going to have to do that, right? Because you're too little. Right. And then we're still saying the same thing to our 18-year-olds. You're too young. I'm going to have to end up fixing this mess anyway, so let me just do it for you. Let me just fill out this job application for you. It's just so easy to fall into that because we love our kids. It's not a sinister motive. It's a very pure motive for parents.
But part of that is, I do think there is some sort of cultural expectation or
Yeah.
mindset about it, because when I was a kid, for my dad, it was, if I love my son, I'll teach him how to change the oil in his car.
Yeah.
Like that to him was, and to let me suffer consequences.
Right.
It's the old adage or whatever. It's the joke. I don't know if you've seen the meme where it was like, when I was a kid, if they called home and said, Britt was sent to the principal's office today and we had to spank him, like that back in the day when you could spank kids.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
my dad was like, thanks, I'll spank him too at home.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, please give him consequences. And we have done this as parents with our kids. I won't say which one and what they did, but there have been times when like we thought they should get harsher consequences at school for some things that they did. And we have had to, we're emailing administrators and teachers of like, please, you have our full support.
Oh yeah. They're
You know,
not,
but
they're gonna say, "You're
nowadays,
crazy."
but
Not gonna
nowadays
do.
we're rare as
Yeah.
parents, because a lot of parents question everything a teacher does, any sort of consequence. We don't want, and that's what I'm saying of, do you know how many shots Michael Jordan had to miss to get where he got, to
Right.
hitting game winners and being I'm just saying like failing is part of the learning curve. When you're a writer, when you're doing anything, failing, and what I've tried to teach my kids is when I push them to do some of these things, or I let them suffer consequences, is like you said, I'd rather you suffer this consequence now.
Yeah.
When I'm around and we can talk through this, and we can, and then if you're 25, because when you're 25, you're going to jail. If you do something the consequences just get worse.
They do.
They're going to turn off your water. Or they're like certain, there are going to be other consequences.
You're going to lose your job. Yeah.
You're going to lose the job. So I'm going to either give you or let you handle these consequences now, because the consequences later are going to be worse. And I think that's what we're seeing with these boomerang kids is partly, at least. I think it's also more expensive. I keep hearing that I think it's more expensive. It's more difficult to get out and get a place to live and all that sort of stuff. And so, so I think there's some of those elements. I don't know how true that is, but they kind of put that out there.
Yeah. I mean, prices have went up, but it's the same world. There's still apartments out there and they still are expensive. They were expensive when we were that age. There's just a different price tag on them now, but yeah. And I want to take the pressure too. I know we've quite a bit. We've said, it's the parents' fault. They're too lenient, but there's also, let's look at the other side. There's also a lot of kids, and I was guilty of this too at that age, where they're like, no, I don't care to learn. Like my dad would try to teach me how to work on my car, and it was so boring to me. I was just like, nah. and things are easier now. Like my daughters are now like, why wouldn't I just take it to the garage? I'm not going to learn how to change oil. And I'm like, well, of course not. You're a girl. And, sorry, I'm old fashioned, but yeah, I could see where a girl would take it to a garage. But my son, I want to teach him how to change the oil. But even him, it's just like, why would I do that? It's I can take it and get the oil changed at a garage, or get the tire changed. And it's now we've got roadside assistance. You don't need to change on the side of the road like I did. You just call someone and it's much safer. Life is a little easier for young adults now. And I like that because it's also safer.
Yeah.
But with that comes the reality that we have to realize there's no longer an interest in them wanting to know the mechanics of a car, because other people are doing it for us and it's affordable. Rather than us spending our entire Saturday, with grease all over our hands and not being able to do what we really want to do. And so life has become more, as a society, we're more astute. We have robots doing things for us, everything's in our hand on our mobile device. And so we got to give kids credit and leniency to realize yeah, there's no incentive. Like they're not going to lose the ability to drive their car if they don't learn how to change the oil. Um, and so I like that part of it, but we have to realize, if they're bored and they don't really want to learn how a car works, I don't blame them. I would like to do, at that age, I wanted to do some more fun stuff too. And so I don't want to, say, oh, this is, it's always a parent's fault. Sometimes it's just boring for kids to learn certain things and they'd rather just wait till they have to learn it. Maybe if I'm lucky, I won't ever have to learn this.
Well, and I think another element to this that is definitely different is I didn't have a cell phone when I was 18 years old,
right?
Where I could say, I don't know how to change a tire.
You can't Google it, right?
Let me Google it, or let me go to YouTube and say, how do you change a tire? And they literally show me how to do it.
Yeah.
On a YouTube video. Now, and I'm saying this as an adult who has done this myself. Like if there's something I don't know how to do, like I had to change a carburetor on the lawnmower.
Yeah.
I didn't know how to do that.
Right.
So I Googled what's the right part. I ordered the part. I got the part. And I ended up saying, and then I ended up going to YouTube and figuring out like, oh, all I have to do. Oh, and it showed me step by step on a video how to. So my point is they have grown up in a society where they have that sort of access to information. That's not new to them. That is their life. And so for them, it's not just that they're bored. To them, it's like, well, I can just figure it. I can find it when I need it. And there's a certain amount of truth to it.
There is. Yeah. That's to their credit. Why learn it until you have to? Maybe you won't have to look up that YouTube video for 20 years. So why learn it now? I think I remembered that, as I'm writing the book and I'm realizing, okay, there's stuff that they don't know what they don't know. And so they're not going to look up things like this. Here's tip number 84. Guys, learn to lead. If you don't, an alpha male will take your job, your girl, and your confidence. At what point is a guy going to say, I'm going to Google and find out how to be a better leader? They might look up that, but I guarantee you that video or whatever it is not going to tell them that advice that I just read. No. So they don't know what they don't know. And I'm hoping that that's what this book does is, here's another tip, learn to apologize sincerely. It's a lost art.
And it is a lost art because here's what's happened. Because I see both the positives and the negatives in my kids, because my kids, as we were talking about before we started recording, were in churches where they were in community a lot. They had people that knew them, adults that knew them. They interacted with adults. My kids regularly get complimented for how they interact with adults. They can carry on a conversation with adults. And I on a regular basis have interactions with other young people, and they won't even answer you.
They don't even look you in the eye.
They won't look you in the eye.
Handshake.
And so as much as they have free access to information, and it's a great tool on their cell phone, it's also isolated them and kept them, because people are people. And I've told my kids, I said, look, guys, I'm telling you, if you will look people in the eye, you're kind to them, you show up when you say you will, and you work hard and you're willing to learn, you will outwork and outperform 99% of your generation.
Yes. Yeah.
You will so these sort of people skills that you're talking about, those never go out of style. Those will never go out of style. Those are never something that and you have to learn them, in my opinion, relationally. You have to learn some of those relationally, or you have to be mentored to some degree from a book or from something else and go, oh, this is wisdom that I can't just get from a YouTube video. It has to be something that I get. And that's why Proverbs doesn't tell me how to change my tire, but Proverbs tells me to get wisdom above all else.
Yeah.
All those sorts of things.
And that's why, yeah, I have a lot of proverbs sprinkled in. I put them in regular everyday language so that they could relate better to it. And then I put the, see Proverbs, whatever, 7:10 or what. Yeah, you're right. There's just stuff that you didn't know that you didn't know. And that's what I'm hoping that I can communicate through this. So, yeah.
Well, and here's a positive thing, and I'll let you, because you talk with some of these young people to help you get some of these
Mhm.
tips.
Yeah.
And what I see in my kids, and just to encourage parents, because I think, I want to be careful too. Parents love their kids,
Yes.
and they don't want them to have consequences.
No.
It hurts them. It hurts me. It hurts us. It hurts
Yeah.
God when we
Yeah.
have consequences. Like it hurts. It hurts. Okay. That's part of love, is we don't want to see people struggle with these things.
Right.
So I totally get that. But just to give people a vision for something deeper and greater is
Mhm.
when our kids do things, learn how to be self-sufficient in things step by step, not all at once. You don't toss them out with nothing. But when
Right.
they do those things, their personal confidence goes up. They're more confident as people. They're more contented. They're
Yes.
happier as people. Like you think, well, if they get this consequence today, they won't be happy. But my point is if they learn from this consequence and actually become a more confident individual while you're helping them manage this while they're in your house,
Mm.
then man, they're going to be so much more confident and more successful and
Yes.
feel more empowered, I guess.
Yeah.
And that's because you're right. So many kids, man, we're dealing with epidemic through the 20s and 30s, people who of that age, epidemics
Mm.
of depression, epidemics of, I saw a statistic the other day that said 1 in 10 adults take medication for depression.
Mm.
But it isn't fixing,
Yeah.
the number of
Oh.
people being hospitalized for depression isn't going down. Like
Right.
something's not working.
Mhm.
And so, but if we empower people and get them to have that sort of self-satisfaction, for lack of a better term, that's not a very spiritual term,
Yeah.
of being confident and doing things on their own and having that sort of stuff,
Mhm.
a purpose and all of those things that I can't. I have to kind of let my kids do it on their own, and to a certain degree. And I think that for me, the positive is, man, when you're that person at 25, I'm going to really want to hang out with that person.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
man, and a whole lot of other people are going to want to hang out. They're going to want to hire you. They're going to want you
Right.
around. They're going to want to marry you. This is the kind of person you're going to be,
It's true. Yeah.
and instead
Because you
of,
stand out above all the rest.
because you're going to
Yeah.
stand out, especially in our culture. But you stood out when we were kids.
Yeah.
Even then you stood out, but even more so now. I think
Yeah.
you're helping your kids, and that's what I have in my brain, and because I know it for
Mhm.
myself, I see it in my kids. When they work hard at something and succeed, like think about my daughter, for she on her own applying for a trip to Germany
It's
and
great. Yeah. Yeah.
getting a paid trip to Germany to take classes. And I'm
Yeah.
like, what a feeling for her, right?
Yeah. And for
I
you,
and for me, I didn't
there's
fill that
nothing
out for
more.
her, and
Yeah.
all of that. So it's just, and so that's the vision I have for my kids, and I think we all want that too. I think everybody does. So just to
Yeah.
kind of put that out there. I don't know if you saw some of that I'm saying self-satisfaction, but that sort of contentment and
Yeah.
confidence in the kids that you, or young people that you talk to.
Yes. Yeah. They're few and far between. But when you see them, they stick out. Like it's like you can see them before you even meet them when they're walking up to you, and like, oh, okay. Uh, they are confident and mature, and I kind of want to get to know that person, even though they're only 22. It's just like people gravitate towards success, and you know, again, that may sound not so spiritual, but yeah, keeping in mind, real success also means being totally dependent on God. If you're dependent on yourself, um, and you're self-sufficient, these are words I think we should shy away from, because
Yeah,
yeah, we have to be
I
dependent
agree.
on Christ, and that's where our confidence comes from, real confidence, and being at peace and not full of anxiety. Usually, those are the people that are following Christ and are totally dependent on Him. Um, yeah. Anyway,
Yeah, and so that's a part of your book too, where you point people to that sort of
I do.
reliance
Yeah,
upon who God is, because the storms will come, right?
they will.
The rains will come, the
Yep.
storms will come, and what do we build our life upon ultimately? And, and yes, I'm all for wisdom in all areas. Proverbs is a great example of that, right?
Yeah.
It has all kind of wisdom in it,
Yes.
but the ultimate wisdom is know the guy who built everything and
Right.
designed it. Like that's the greatest opportunity we have for
Mhm.
all of that
Yeah.
self-confidence, for lack of a better term, for all of that sort of confidence in life
Right.
to weather that stuff.
He's the only one that should really be the only helicopter parent.
Right.
And I'm
Exactly.
glad that he is.
Right.
He hovers over me, and he does watch over me as I sleep all night.
Yes.
And yeah, I want him to be, yeah. And in fact, I dedicated the book to him, and I said, thanks for being my helicopter parent, God.
Mm.
Uh, and thanks, mom and dad, for not being helicopter parents, so that I could learn to make God my helicopter parent. That's what we want ultimately. So,
Hmm.
yeah, we'll see what God does with the book.
Yeah.
And yeah,
So where can they get it? Where can people get the book?
it's only on Amazon, and it releases April 23rd, right before graduation season. So it'd be a great gift for, if graduating seniors, whether they're graduating from high school or college, because there's, some college kids that could really benefit from this as well. Um, I I am still benefiting every time I go through it. I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot about that. Uh, God, God's word builds faith in our lives slowly over time. It's more like a vitamin and less like a Red Bull. I
I
like that.
love it. I love
Yeah.
it.
That's from Pastor Michael Patillo, pastor here in Colorado Springs. So yeah, they can get it on Amazon, and it releases April 23rd, and or they can go to my website at tezbrooks.com, and I might be able to get them a copy a little bit earlier than that. So yeah,
Awesome. Can you get me a copy earlier than that?
of course,
No,
buddy.
I can. The only reason I want it from you is so you would sign it for me. That's the only reason. That's the only reason.
Yeah,
Uh,
that'll drive the price way down on that book.
oh no.
Then it'll depreciate.
Yeah, no, it'll be good. Well, hey man, as usual, this was awesome, and I love talking with you as always. We used to do a whole lot of talking without on Zoom without recording it. So these are always fun conversations. So I appreciate you, man. And if you would just pray us out, pray for these young people that they would see the benefits of applying themselves and becoming the adults that God desires for them to be, and to
Yeah, I'd
have
love to
that
do that.
joy.
All right. Well, Father, thank you. Thanks for good friends like Britt. I pray that you'd help us to be able to meet in person again soon, maybe at a writers' conference or wherever. But Lord, I just want to take this time right now to pray for all the young adults, God, from 15 years old up to 30, 35, whoever might benefit from this. Lord, I just pray that you would be with them and guide them, help them to learn to be totally dependent on you. I pray that you would, yeah, open doors before them and prepare the way for them in life, so that adulting is not so anxiety laden, uh, and that they would lean totally on you, God. I just
Mm,
pray that you would bring peace and comfort, and that you would open doors for them and make it obvious the doors that are closing.
mm,
Just help them to remember to read your word, and for that to be a light unto their feet. Yeah, and let them be a light to the world. I pray that you
Amen.
would shine through them, and that peace would be attractive to the world, and that the world would say, "Man, what does this young person have that they're so confident and peaceful?" And that would be an opportunity for them to say, "My confidence is in the Lord." And Lord, we thank you for that, because we can do nothing without you, Father. So we just, yeah, pray that you would bless these young people with good jobs, good families, good mates,
Yes.
and but most of all, spiritual success. In other words, uh, that they would grow in their walk with you, and if they're not following you, that they would be wooed by your Holy Spirit, and that they
Mm.
would see that they can't survive without a daily walk with you, Christ. We just thank you for all these things in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, bro.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Hope to see you soon in real life.
Yeah, that's right.